All right. In our demo domain here, one of the first things we did, because we have 4 servers running right now, we wanted to be able to connect to any server with any user. It's not a good practice, but it's a lab environment, so we wanted that flexibility. So the first thing we did was set up a group policy that allowed us to use RDP to connect to any server from any user. The way that we did that is we went to the default, the root of the domain in group policy, and we set up this domain RDS policy. What this is doing is it's setting in the remote desktop users, it's adding the domain users to it. Let's actually open this up and look at it. It's going to be a little bit more clear. So under preferences and control panel settings, you have local users and groups. And in here, you can add users or groups that you want to exist, that you want to create or modify on a server. In this case, we did new group and we went to remote desktop users. We selected the existing built-in group and then we added domain users to that group. What this is going to do is it drops the domain users group, which contains all users in the domain, into the remote desktop users group of any computer this policy applies to. In this case, because it's at the root of the domain, it's going to apply to any computer that's in our domain because we're not using blocked inheritance anyway or anywhere. So to demonstrate that, let's just connect quick to another server, and I'm going to look at one of my random users here. It's not an admin account. John Carter seems like a good victim. So dzab j Carter, and assuming I haven't reset his password, I did reset his password. I just recorded my video on setting password policies, so he was probably one of my demo accounts. There we go. Okay, so John Carter is a regular user. He's not supposed to have admin access, but because I set that GPO, he's able to RDP into this web server. Now, what this is demonstrating is how you grant rights to any Windows computer that's on a domain. So that's servers or computers. And we're going to talk about these built-in groups. So that's why we're bringing this up now. So if I go to computer management on this web server, nothing else has been configured here, but we know the GPO applied because I can connect. So I open computer management. I went to local users and groups, open groups, and here are the built-in groups that exist on this server or any other computer in the domain. Now we know if I open this, it's going to show that domain users group because that's the GPO we just looked at. That's also why I'm able to connect because I'm in here. So you can see in here, these are the groups that are used to grant various permissions. The 2 most common ones are remote desktop users for granting remote desktop rights or being able to use RDP to connect to that server. And then there's administrators, which if you hear a local administrator, that means you are a member of this group. Now, by default, the only people that are going to be in this group are your domain admins and whatever user was used to set up the computer. So that's all that's in here. And these are the people that have administrator rights on this server. If I want to add somebody else as an administrator, I can use this command, which I'm going to need to use a different account. If I can remember a password. Oh my gosh, 1 second here. Apparently I don't know my own password. So this is fine. I think I configured my server admins group, so I should be able to still do this. I have to to look up the name of this user. 1 second. I don't have access to my clipboard. Okay. If this doesn't work, this video is going to go south in a hurry. Oh my god. Okay, so this is a good demonstration, I guess. I need to be in the domain admins group. So let's go back and just look at who's a member of that group. It should be that DZ admin. Oh, and L Evans DA. Okay, so interesting. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so the reason that was happening is we looked at this. The only people who have admin rights on the server, the only people who are a member of this administrators group are domain admins and the Azure user. I thought I had a GPO configured to configure this server admins group for these other accounts. This is the hard part with working in a demo environment, I guess. But I need to be a domain admin. Apparently my password for the other domain admin isn't working, but it's fine because I have this other demo user. So I was finally able to use his account, because he's an administrator, to run an administrator terminal. Now we're going to show how to add someone to that group. So we can use the net local group command to add someone to that administrators group. So it's net local group administrators add, and I'm going to do J Carter, because that's the user I'm logged in as. And once that's complete, we'll see J Carter is there. It's not going to take place until I log out and log back in. So I'll do that quick. We're going to save that connection. There we go. Connect. Alright, I should be an admin, so I should be able to launch an administrator PowerShell terminal. No problem. Alright, admin rights granted. So that's showing local groups on a server. The local built-in groups are used to grant permissions, both RDP, administrator, and anything else that's listed there. Now the reason I wanted to show this on servers or another computer, let's go ahead and connect to our domain controller now. And I'm going to use that same DA account that we know works. Alright, I'm going to pull up PowerShell terminal, but first I'm going to show you this. So let's go to computer management. If you remember, in the other one we went to computer management, local users and groups. I'm on a domain controller, I pull up computer management, and I do not see local users and groups. Just for comparison, let's go back to our management desktop here, pull up the same thing, local users and groups. Back to the domain controller, it is not there. However, if I go back to this PowerShell terminal and I type in the same command we used on the other server, net local group administrators add, and J Carter is our lucky demo user, it says command completed successfully. So it worked. We know it did something, but if that group doesn't exist, we need to know where it added him. This is where Active Directory built-in groups come into place. So I open the Active Directory console and I navigate to built-in. You will see here the same list of groups, almost the same list of groups that you'll see in that local users and groups directory on a computer. This shows the difference with a domain controller from any other computer in your environment is that these groups are tied directly to Active Directory. So you can't configure permissions on a domain controller the same way you configure on other servers. And if you do, if you add someone to these groups, it doesn't actually grant them just local rights on that domain controller. What you're actually doing is granting them rights to the entire domain. If I open up this administrators group and go to members, J Carter is now here because I added him with this command. showing the administrators group here is not local, it's in the domain. And this administrators group in the domain grants permissions to everything in the domain. So you have to be much more careful working with built-in permissions on domain controllers. It's also worth noting that these groups have a lot more permissions across your entire domain than just on this one server. So you want to know what these groups do, you want to know that they exist, and why you would use them or why you don't really want to use them. Specifically, I like to restrict access to domain controllers unless people absolutely need it. So I will be very aware of groups like server operators, which allow logon rights to a domain controller. It's kind of with the intention of running Windows updates on it, but I don't really even like to do that. So I always restrict membership of groups that are going to grant access to a domain controller and provide some other method for those sort of maintenance tasks that need to happen. That's I'm not going to go through each built-in group, but there is documentation out with Microsoft that shows what each group does and what permissions it grants. I will link that in the video below, but that is our overview of built-in groups for Active Directory.